Listowel, Ontario is a quiet village surrounded by farmland, a short distance from the theatrical town of Stratford. In the late 1800s, Listowel became the focus of a ghastly performance, one which the town hoped would never be repeated. Susan Brown was cutting through Fairview Cemetery, walking her dog one evening. Suddenly, the dog started to go crazy, barking frantically. It was quiet. There was no one around. But then Susan saw a young girl emerge from behind a tombstone and stare at her coldly. Susan felt a chill of fear as she realized this wasn't an ordinary child. She was an apparition from another time. She vanished into the shadows, leaving Susan too terrified to speak.
This is one of the scariest stories we're ever going to tell you. Every village and town has a hidden past that no one likes to speak of. Some things are just too horrible to mention. Stratford and Listowel in Ontario, Canada, will forever be connected by a past that brings together two spirits. Spirits that are joined by a horrific series of events that unfolded in the fall of 1894.
On the morning of October 9th, the remains of Jessie Keith, a young girl from the Elma Township, were found in a pool of blood by the lake. Listowel had fallen victim to the most disturbing murder in all of its history. Jessie Keith had not only been robbed of her life, but stripped of her childhood innocence. When her body was found, it was so badly mutilated that many feared Listowel had been paid a visit by Jack the Ripper, the elusive Whitechapel murderer from London, England. The Ripper gained his name from the sadistic way in which he left his victims, often gutted like an animal and arranged in a sick display of indulgence. Jessie Keith had suffered the same fate. During this time, the notorious Jack the Ripper was still at large, so the authorities called in Detective Murray to solve the case. Listowel was in a frenzy after the discovery of Jessie's body, and desperate to find a killer. The whole community assisted Murray in his investigations. Tramps and vagrants were hauled in from all over the countryside, but there was nothing to go on. Murray was at a loss as to who committed this evil deed. Without the luxury of forensic science to find the killer, Murray needed old-fashioned hard evidence and reliable witnesses in order to find the perpetrator of such a horrible crime. This came in the form of a black valise. It was found in the woods among some rocks, and its contents were to turn the investigation around. Inside were the blood-stained overalls used by the macabre killer, along with the victim's shoes. But mysteriously, the valise contained items of women's clothing that did not belong to either the murderer or the victim. These items had been stolen from a Mrs. McLeod, and there were witnesses to prove it.
I met a man on my way back from Elsa Craig. We had some talk about the weather, and I went on my way. The next afternoon, I took the same route by the woods and came across the man again. This time he was disguised in a lady's bonnet and a black skirt, and he carried a black valise. It was very strange. We didn't speak, but anyone could see he was a man.
So, tell me what you saw.
I saw a man on the road south of Britain. He was carrying a valise and he looked like a tramp with nowhere to go. I got close enough and I heard him mumbling to himself like a lunatic.
There was this sorry-looking man on the back porch begging for food. He must have been passing through. He was carrying this black valise. I remember thinking at the time it was strange the way he held on to that bag for all his life. I just stepped out for a moment, and when I came back, he was gone.
Do you recognize this man?
That's him.
It wasn't long before the recurring valise and its contents led to the murderer. Amédée Chattel.